again. Thanks for joining us for more stories about Tree of Life. Wanted to talk a little bit about the building because, as you can imagine, at least in Michigan, I mean, maybe it's not true other places, but you need to have a decent building to have a school in. Usually people aren't excited about tents out in the middle of a field. And so one thing that the Lord had made really abundantly clear along the way here was, that the school needed to be in the Edison neighborhood. We were looking all over the place. We were thinking maybe it would be here, maybe it would be over there, maybe it would be at Vanguard Church, maybe there'd be some rental space, but there's not any vacant school buildings laying around in our neighborhood, and almost all the property is used up. In fact, one time, the old East Christian over on Sprinkle Road, they had shut that building down. It was up for sale. And I was like, I could call those guys and we could go over there kind of thing. I was really starting to think about maybe we could go over there kind of thing. And literally, I opened my Bible and I was reading, I think it was it's in Jeremiah, maybe 42 or something. And I read this scripture and it said, if you leave this land, you will surely die. But if you stay in this land, I will hold back Pharaoh's hand and you will survive. And I knew right then and there, the Lord was speaking to me, and I took that to heart and I let it go. I said, fine. Well, as time went on, we made all kinds of assumptions about the building, that you could be a school and just be grandfathered in, and if you're a private school and everything, hey, that's going to work out just A-okay. Well, we made a lot of assumptions, but with that, we started looking around, and then when we started asking St. Joe's, we knew that they had old classrooms, and even back here with those worship risers, this is actually where we would hold worship every morning with the kids. So many cool stories, and you'll see some cool pictures about that too, with kids worshiping on there. And I love it when kids came too. The first time they were like, I'm leading my worship with my guitar, and half of them are going what's this guy doing? What's going on here? And within a month, they were like, anytime I wasn't able to be there someday, they're like, we're not having worship today. They get so upset and everything. It was crazy. But we really started pressing into St. Joe's. And boy, we started at least 6, 7, 8 months before school's going to open, and it was so slow. And we're working on it. Oh, we've got committees to make decisions and da-da-da-da. And people were like, do you got to build? I'm like, well, it's going to be in that. People are asking, where's the school at? And I'm saying in faith, it's going to be over here. I don't know yet for sure. And no joke, we didn't sign a lease for these 2 rooms until August, 1 month before school started. We didn't know for sure this is where the school's going to be at. And when we finally got it, we were relieved, and we're like, okay, we made it. Great. We're actually going to have a school building. We could tell people it's going to be over here at St. Joe's. And then the crazy thing was, a week before we opened, the fire marshal called and said, hey, you can't be in there as a school. And my heart stopped for, I'm going to think, at least a full 10 seconds. And then it got going again. And I said, well, we're just a small school. We're not trying. It's like, oh, nope, this is the code. And the law at that time was, which it's changed several times now, but at that time was, if it doesn't get grandfathered into under the old school building, if it was more than 3 years since the last one closed. It had been 5 years. And he's like, so now it's considered new construction. So you would have to have a whole bureau investigation of what codes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going under. Anyway, I ended up actually getting a hold of, eventually, that was the regional fire marshal. I got a hold of the state fire marshal, and I got a hold of the secretary. I said, can I talk to this guy named Tony? I'm like, I'll get you donuts, flowers, whatever. I just got to talk to him for a minute. And she's like, well, we can't do that, sir. I'm like, well, whatever. He actually called me And I was telling him, I'm like, Tony, we're just a small school. We're just serving a few kids. I'm like, we're trying to help some underserved kids and and I said, we're not even registered with the state of Michigan as a school. And he's like, you're not? I'm like, no, do you want us to be? I'm like, do we have to be? I don't know what's going on. And he's like, you know what? Hang on a minute. Let me call you back. And so and I remember I had a lunch meeting at Panera on West Main, and I'm like, and he called me back, and I had to run out in the parking lot. He's like, well, you know what? He said, if you're not registered with the state of Michigan, we have no business with you. And I'm like, no. I started laughing and doing a jig in the parking lot, and I'm like, dude, you just made my year. This is fantastic. Well, anyway, the Michigan Department of Education didn't like that. They called a week later and said, you got to register. But we just didn't call them back. And that's kind of how the first year went. But it left us with this whole thing like, we're not trying to beat the system. We're trying to play nice and do it the right way. But Lord, what does that even mean? And honestly, for the next 3 months, I was having to dry heaves about every other day because I was kind of expecting this paddy wagon from Lansing to come down here and throw chains on the doors and cuff me and throw me in the back of I didn't know. I was scared. But the Lord in his faithfulness, we just kept pressing on, and that will lead us into the next episode.